We mentioned the location of the gallbladder in a previous video, but we need to talk more about how the gallbladder functions and a little more about its actual structure itself. Now, the gallbladder itself, the main function is to accept bile that's produced in the liver and store it. As it stores the bile, it can concentrate that bile. It can concentrate it up to 10 times. By moving water, by moving electrolytes, and leaving the components that are very functional, those bile salts, those other portions of lipids. This allows a more concentrated, more potent bile to be secreted into the intestines when food is present. Now, if you're saying, well, hold on, maybe my gallbladder is removed, or I know somebody that had their gallbladder removed, then this whole process doesn't occur. The bile goes directly from the liver into the small intestines. At that point, it's not as concentrated, so there might be some dietary changes necessary. But we'll assume the gallbladder is intact and go from that point. Now, what's happening here is the concentrated bile is released via the cystic duct. That cystic duct goes into the bile duct. And that bile duct is what heads down into the duodenum, into the small intestines. So here you can see gallbladder, this is the cystic duct, and here is the bile duct heading down. But let's take a little closer look to really see what is going on inside the gallbladder. So here you can see the gallbladder. You can tell that there is the fundus, the body, and the neck of the gallbladder. You can notice that you have the cystic duct located here. That cystic duct is heading down into the bile duct. That bile duct is what's heading down into the actual duodenum, into the small intestines. So you're having the liver producing the bile, going into the gallbladder, and from the gallbladder, heading down into the small intestines. All right, how do you regulate this? Well, there's bile secretion, and then there's also going to be contractions of the gallbladder. Bile secretion is regulated by this enterohepatic circulation, if you have bile salts present, but also by feedback mechanisms found inside of the small intestines. If your small intestines, your duodenum, will be able to detect, so chemical receptors, be able to detect hydrochloric acid and fatty chyme. Because hydrochloric acid can only come from the stomach. So therefore, if the stomach dumps a little bit of chyme down into the small intestines, it's more acidic. That triggers the secretion of bile. So more of the regulation there. Now, the gallbladder contraction is stimulated in a different way. Gallbladder contraction, which basically contracts and pushes the bile out. So this contraction to help get more bile out is by cholecystokinin, known as CCK. But this one is dealing with exposure to proteins and fat. So it's a little bit different mechanism. It's very similar. So again, if you have that chyme coming down into the small intestines, you're going to have these components, but they're a little different feedback mechanism coming up for this stimulation. So looking at proteins and chyme, and then the fats in the chyme. Now, CCK will also cause the hepatopancreatic sphincter to relax. Now, why is that important? Because the hepatopancreatic sphincter is what allows the bile to pass into the duodenum. Otherwise, if that sphincter is closed, it just sits in the bile duct. It cannot be released. So not only do you have to secrete it, the bile that is, you have to open the sphincter up to allow the bile to pass through. So a little bit about the bile and how it's being produced there, or actually say concentrated, not produced. It's produced in the liver, concentrated in the gallbladder, and then secreted, and the mechanisms that control the secretion.